We're in this spring Devo series called Hands, and this one today is called A Hand Up. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's found in Exodus 17, and Moses was praying and praising God, and every time he kept his hands up, the children of Israel were winning the battles. But when his hands grew tired and they hung down, then the enemy pursued them. So it says that when Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and Aaron and Hur, two men, held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that Moses' hands remained steady till sunset. Maybe you've heard this story. And the Lord told Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered. And then he tells him that he's going to blot out the enemies. And then Moses built this altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner," because the hands were lifted up against the Lord, but the Lord won, and those two guys came along beside him and held up his hands. Okay, hands were held up for the people in praise and honor of God, and as long as this leader Moses held up his hands, the enemies were being defeated, but of course he got tired. I've had multiple friends, and I myself have experienced this as well, growing tired of holding our hands up in prayer and praise. Maybe we've had too many assaults on our family, or maybe our friends are tired physically and spiritually. This is a very crucial time in the life of a believer when our hands grow tired, but it happens to the best of us. We have no energy to lift up our hands in praise or faith, so they hang low, and darkness closes in. This is a pivotal time in our lives because friends that are left alone with hands hanging low become prime targets for discouragement and lies. And it's then that we need to read the rest of the story again. Two guys came along and set a stone under Moses so that he could sit, and each man sat on either side of him and lifted up his hands till sunset, so they were there for the duration. Have you ever needed a stone to sit on and someone to hold up your arms? I have. That stone can symbolize the rock, the truth, and sometimes someone else needs to take the word and place it underneath us with weak hands and trembling knees. He's the rock that doesn't roll. Jesus is his name, and he can be placed under a tired friend through prayer and kindness, not preachiness and shame. Think about your own friends that are struggling, or how you might be able to set a stone underneath them and then hold up their hands. It could be simple enough to call a friend and say, you know what? Let your cares go today. Don't pray, don't fret, don't do anything but sit, and let me do the praying and the praise for you. Do you remember when Jesus was so tired in the garden and he asked his followers to come aside and pray with him, but they fell asleep? They could have offered Jesus a stone. They could have lifted up his hands and perhaps encouraged their Lord. But their misunderstandings and their own tiredness overtook them, and so they slept. When these two guys held up Moses' hands, battles were won, and it says that they held his arms up until sunset. Hands of opposition were lifted up against Moses and the people, but hands of praise and prayer defeated the opposition with victory. At any point in our lives, our hands are either raised for someone else in need, or they might be lifted up in praise and joy because our own life is good. There are times when we're the weary ones, or when others' hands are hanging low. Hands are so important. Lifting them in praise is a symbol of trust and acknowledgement that he is our God and we love him. Offering our hands to hold up another might be one of the best acts of love we can give on any given day. And using our hands to put a stone underneath weak knees might save lives. So where are your hands at the moment? If they're up and your arms are strong, find someone in need and hold up theirs. If your own arms are weak and dangling down and you're weak in the knees, call a friend of faith and trust that person to hold up your arms as you rest. At the end of this story, it says Moses built that altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." I read one commentary that said by referring to God as his banner, Moses was acknowledging that his whole identity was found in and founded on God. His life's purpose was to know God, understand his perspective, and do what God called him to do. And he was able to lift that banner because two friends came alongside him to hold his arms up, to renew his strength, and help him sit on the truth of who God was, the stone that cannot be moved. Hands lifted up or hanging down, either one or the other at all times ensures victory for all.